The eyes are on the Jersey Shore. I am Vin Ebenu here in Freehold with Monmouth County Clerk Christine Hanlon talking about the upcoming general election on November 2nd, as well as the early voting process already underway. So, a lot changes this year. Last year we were looking and talking, I remember you and I, about the primarily mail-in ballot election, obviously because of COVID. This year we have the mail-in ballots, certainly not as many, only to registered voters and everything, but we have an early voting process, and we have the traditional election day voting here. So to start with this early in-person voting process already underway here, just quickly, what are some of the things that are different that people need to know about with this additional option?
Yes. Well, what I'd like to tell people is, most importantly, we have more ways to vote and more days to vote in person this year than ever before. And that's really exciting for people, and I'm excited about it. I'm participating in early voting this year. One of the most important things to know about that is that you can only early vote at certain designated locations. It's not at your usual polling place in your local district, your neighborhood. You have to make sure that you go to one of the designated polling locations within your county during that 9-day early voting period. And voters can typically find this information on their local county website or the State Division of Elections website.
Now, these votes, early voting, that they don't get tallied up, I think you said recently, until Election Day or afterwards anyway. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I voted early, so my ballot will get casted, so I'll be able to see. So how does that factor in with the ballots coming in and how things get tallied up?
Yes. Well, so for the early voting process, The vote tallies cannot take place until close of the polls on November 2nd this year, on Election Day. So all that information about the votes it's secured, and the county clerks will not be given that information to include with their tabulation until Election Day and close of the polls on Election Day. So I don't want voters to think that, if I go vote early, I'm going to get those results early. And actually, we've had a lot of those questions. Candidates have asked us, when are you posting the early voting results? Are you going to post them early? No, the law requires that. That would be very unfair anyway in terms of the voting process. So the law requires that all of that information is secured, the actual tally, until close of the polls on Election Day. So on Election Day, typically you'll have, in most counties, some counties are different, you'll have your Election Day results come in after close of the polls. We expect here in Monmouth County to post the early voting results. Some counties may wait till the next day, depending upon their systems. I've heard that some counties might wait until the following day after Election Day to post that. But in Monmouth, we expect to post the early voting results after close of the polls on election night. And then, of course, the vote by mail results are counted on Election Day, and we will post those at the close of the polls also as soon as we receive that information from the Board of Elections. And then we'll continue to post in the days following if we get more vote by mail results, and then, of course, provisional ballot results, and all those results will be posted. But one of the things I like to tell voters is that the voting experience when you go to do early voting is going to be very different than what most voters have experienced in the past in New Jersey. And one of the most important things is the deployment of electronic poll books. In New Jersey, we've always been used to this paper poll book system, where you go into your voting location, there's a paper poll book, you talk to the poll worker, you sign your name in the paper poll book. Because of early voting, all the counties were mandated to purchase electronic poll books. So now voters are going to see something more like an iPad or a tablet device. Then they will have to sign with a stylus on this electronic device rather than paper.
Now, with that new process, the new technology process, how does that similar, and how is that different from what people will see, and how they will vote on Election Day itself in terms of heading in, casting the ballot, pushing any of the buttons? Are there a lot of similarities, or is everything kind of pretty different?
So it depends on which equipment we're talking about. So in terms of the electronic poll books, instead of the paper poll books, the counties have to deploy the electronic poll books both for early voting and for election day. So that experience for the voter will be similar whether you go to vote early at a designated location or whether you go vote at your local polling location on election day. And the reason for that is because you have to make sure that voters aren't going out and trying to vote twice. And these systems update in real time. And between the end of early voting and the start of election day voting, there's not enough time to print out paper poll books, throughout the state. So so these electronic poll books are easy to update, and then they're ready to go for election day. It's too hard to create all the paper between the end of early voting and election day because you only have like a day or two. So that experience will be similar for the voter, whether it's early voting or election day, electronic poll book, signing with the stylus. What might be different for the voters will be the type of voting machine that they vote on between early voting and election day. So some counties purchase new machines just for early voting because you have to be able to give the voter during early voting any type of ballot from around the county. And that's a special type of machine that you have to be able to produce, like in Monmouth County. That's 53 plus ballots because we have 53 municipalities and we have some bilingual ballots. So it's a lot of ballots to produce. So you have to have a voting machine that can produce any one of those ballots, no matter where the voter goes. So most of the counties, we all had to purchase these machines for early voting. Some counties are using their voting machines that they already had for election day. So the voter would see something different if they went for early voting or if they went for election day. In Monmouth County, our commissioners invested in new machines for every day, for early voting and for election day. So the experience for the voter will be the same. You'll see the same type of electronic poll book. You'll see the same type of voting machine. But in some counties, there's a different type of voting machine because they may be using machines that they've always used in the past for election day, but purchase new machines just for the early voting.
I know with the early in-person voting, there has to be a paper trail. Is that not the case with voting on election day itself, with having to print out the ballot, confirm the votes, or is that part of what election day will look like as well?
So if the counties are using their machines that they've had for the past 20 years, there will not be that type of paper trail for each vote because those machines cannot accommodate that. The way the law is, though, is once you upgrade or purchase new machines, you're required to have the paper trail. So if there's a county that has their current machines for election day and it's not the type of machine that has a paper trail for each vote, then on election day this year, they'll have the summary that they've always had, but you won't have that paper trail for each vote because they just didn't purchase the new machines that would have that capability. In Monmouth, though, our machines, because our commissioners invested in the new machines for election day, every one of our machines will have that type of paper trail for each vote that is cast on a voting machine.
In terms of locations, is everything on election day itself the same as it has been, so people will find out which school, which church, or wherever they have to go and vote? Is the same kind of, you show up, you cast your ballot and leave? Is that part of the process still the same, the location and everything, or are there more or less locations this year?
So the election day process is the same as in not last year. Let's take last year out of the picture because that was a whole different one-time scenario, we hope. But it's the normal process on election day. voters go to their regular polling location. There may have been some change, as normally happens from year to year. There might be like a change in your neighborhood polling location in your election district. So it's always good to check your sample ballot that you receive in the mail so that you know what your election day district is. It's probably the same as last year, but sometimes there are little changes. There's some, accommodation that had to be, considered, and there's a change. But it's really important that voters look at their sample ballot so they know where to go on election day. And they also can check on the State Division of Elections website for their polling location. If you're in Monmouth, you can check monmouthcountyvotes.com. That has all the polling locations. But the important thing to remember, though, is that the polling locations for early voting are not the same as election day polling locations. Now, there may be a scenario here and there throughout the state where there is the same polling location just because that location just might be a normal polling location. But odds are your election day polling location is not the same as the early voting locations, because the early voting locations, you had to consider the geographic locations, you had to consider connectivity issues, you had to consider safety issues, enough parking for early voting. So there were a lot of considerations that went into picking the early voting sites. And of course, there are many fewer sites than your normal election day sites. So you have to check, because they're probably going to be different between early voting and election day.
In terms of just the election in general here, I know your office, like many other clerks' offices, tracks how many people come out to vote or how many people submit ballots each year, kind of the voter turnout, which you look at the percentage, just across the board anywhere is kind of low, even in a presidential year like it was last year. This year we have the governor's race. Next year is the midterms. Even the year after that, there's always that important election to know. So I think people get excited about different elections, but the county, the municipal races, mayor, council, school board, there's an importance to each one of them for how it affects people on a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis with the things that happen in their own community, not just within their state or their country as well. So I know you've had programs and discussions in the past as well with how your vote counts. So what are some ways that you continue to work on that message and try to get people in Monmouth County or across the state, just anywhere, to get out and vote, especially now with 3 different ways to cast a ballot?
Yes, it's so important that you mentioned that, because as you said, like some elections, there's a really low turnout. And if you look back to 4 years ago, in the gubernatorial election, the turnout was very low. It was in the 30% turnout. And I find that to be sad, because it's so important to get out and vote for no matter what election it is, because people's votes really do matter. In Monmouth County, we've had elections that come down to 1 vote or end in a tie. And this is what I like to tell people when I go out and educate students on the voting process, that their vote, you can't just think about, the presidential election every 4 years. There are all of these elections that happen every single year that really affect your life on a daily basis. And your vote could be the difference between a win or loss in a local election. We've had recounts based on 1 vote, 2 votes, 5 votes. Happens all the time in Monmouth County. So what we try to do is we have a program called Your Vote Matters. And for the past 6 years, I've been going into the schools to talk to high school seniors about the voting process and to encourage them to really vote in every election, because the local elections, the state elections, they really do matter in terms of your daily activities and your life. The other thing we've been trying to do, and I feel like we did a really good job with it last year, and we're trying to do it again, is educate people about the voting process, which thereby encourages people to participate. So last year we saw in Monmouth County like a record-breaking 82% turnout for the presidential, which we were really happy with. And I feel like we assisted with that, all the election offices and the state too, to try to educate voters about all the components, about the procedure. And we're doing that again this year. We launched a video campaign on social media, on television, radio, interviews, brochures, to try and educate people about the process and encourage people to get out and vote, because it's so important for residents, voters, to exercise their civic duty. But it really does matter. It really it matters in your daily life. These decisions that are made. So.
Just to close out here, any election questions, advice? I know you're big with MonmouthCountyVotes.com. What is it what other information or sites, phone numbers that you'd like to get out to the residents in Monmouth County?
Well, I always try to direct people, as you said, to MonmouthCountyVotes.com, because it has pretty much everything you need to know about the process on that website. It has all the phone numbers. It has phone numbers of elected officials, your municipal clerks, your election officials in the county. My office number is, if people have questions about mail-in ballots or anything else, is 732-431-7790. And follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. We are constantly putting out all kinds of information, videos. We did an animated video this year about how to use the new equipment that people have really taken to, and I feel like the animated videos, people take the time to really, because it's interesting to watch. My assistant Jennifer Collins helps me with social media and everything else. She's been amazing, trying to get press releases out. So if you follow us on social media, Monmouth County Clerk, visit our website, MonmouthCountyVotes.com. And we also have a free elections app that has tons of information. Also, you can get the election results on that. It's Monmouth Votes. It's free on the Apple app and Google Play stores. We send push notifications so voters remember everything they possibly need to, know. And, we send out all kinds of information that way.
I appreciate you taking out some time. I know some things with every election year, every election cycle stay the same. This year, last year, there's some differences, some changes. I think it's always important to keep people up to date with what's going on, with what they need to know, how they vote, especially a lot of people who are out there every year dedicated to voting. They want to know that they can go out there and cast their ballot as well. So appreciate you taking out some time and to explain the similarities and the differences to last year and even 2019. We'll skip past 2020 for a second there, but
right.
Thank you for taking out some time to explain everything with the election process.
And thank you for having the interest and taking the time to talk to me about it. I really appreciate that, and that helps get the word out to all the voters and educate them.
Absolutely. And to all of you out there who have voted, great work, either through the mail or early in-person voting. If you are choosing to vote on Election Day, good work as well. And encourage family and friends, just get out there, vote, cast your ballot, because each and every race, each and every question on your ballot as well, it all counts, it all matters. So make sure you get out there and vote and encourage others to do the same. Once again, thanks to Monmouth County Clerk Christine Hanlon. I am Vin Ebenu here at the Monmouth County Clerk's office in Freehold, reminding you to get out there and vote, and we'll see you next time.